In this chapter, you'll see how to animate a scene where Neo blocks a punch from an agent, then ducks under a second punch and comes back up. Switch over to wireframe mode, which makes it easier to see which part of a character is selected. Since the arms on these characters are so small, it's impossible to animate them throwing punches without increasing the length of the arms. This is not noticeable in the final scene, and allows the arm to be long enough to make contact with the other character. We now switch to the 4 views layout. This view is great for animation, in that it allows you to quickly inspect the scene from 4 distinct views. We'll start this animation by rotating the agent's arms up and around. He'll be flying from the right to throw a punch at Neo. I'd also recommend that you rotate his head slightly. Remember, the more parts of a character that you animate, the more realistic it looks in the end. Now that the agent is positioned, we go ahead and switch over to the Neo model. For Neo, we take his hand and we rotate it up. Neo is expecting this punch, and we have to position him in a pose ready to block it. We also rotate his head slightly, for a more realistic effect. Switching to frame 20, we drag the agent closer to Neo and adjust his rotation slightly. His punch will be in mid-swing here, so we rotate his hands to show this. Once we're done with these hands, we switch over to the Neo model. We also need to adjust Neo's position, because at this point, he will be blocking the agent's blow. In order to accomplish this, we rotate him slightly and move him downwards. In the final version of this scene, the ground was never visible, so I took advantage of that and cheated a little by placing Neo below ground level. I found that I had to do this many times for many different scenes, because since the South Park character has such small legs and no visible knees, it's incredibly hard to make them squat. We continue modifying the movement at the next keyframe, which is frame 40. At this point, the agent has thrown a second punch, but Neo has ducked under it, so we rotate him downwards, along with his hands. Moving his hands downward, make it appear that he is bracing himself on the floor, so he can spring back up and confront the agent. We now need to modify the agent, and bring his hand over Neo's head. As you can see, the hands on these characters, even after lengthening them, are still very small. The agent's hand barely reaches the top of Neo's head. I found myself dealing with this many times, but with a little practice, I learned how to move the characters so that this would hardly matter. We also bring him up into the air a little. Since he's throwing a punch, this emphasizes the effect and appears to be a more powerful move. At the last keyframe, the agent has now completed his second punch, and Neo is standing up again, ready to fight back. When you're finally done positioning all the characters and all their individual parts, we switch back to perspective mode to analyze what we've done. We click play, and we see it play out in wireframe. Switching to solid view mode, we see that their hands are a little too low during the block. So, we go back to frame 20, and we change the position of both their hands to be a little higher. You'll find that complex scenes like this take a while to animate properly, because of all the movements. I recommend animating the characters through the rough motions like this first, and then zooming in and analyzing all the points of contact, as well as their motions using different angles and multiple views. A well-animated scene will always pay off and look much more realistic. When you're in a hurry to complete a scene, and you animate it carelessly, your audience will always be able to tell that the animator did not put much effort into it. That is why it's always important to know that you should take your time and not hurry through a scene.